So the 3D transformation model that we will talk about now is something that works everywhere. It can work in your area of life. It can be helpful for you as an individual, or in your family, or in your business, in your work, in society. You can use it, you can apply it also in different events in life. About 22 years ago, I went into an interview. So I'm originally from Luanda, so I'm happy to have colleagues here from Luanda. I won't call them students. So I attended interviews. So that was the interview that got me into Luanda. Background is that I'm a little bit of many things, so you might be surprised that I'll be talking about certain things that pertain to me, and PK has just spoken about what I do in government, so I'm just seconded there. They just asked me if I could come and help out. And anytime I can always go back to Luanda. I love academics. Yeah, so when I was a child, I always wanted to be a professor, and I'm still working towards that. So when I finished, I completed my first degree. I studied irrigation engineering, so I'm an engineer, supposed to be. Now I'm told we should be careful with how we use these titles, engineer, doctor. Yeah, so I did irrigation engineering. I always wanted to be a professor at a university, and I wanted to study at Luanda, but there was no opportunity for anyone else to go into the institution in our field. They advertised for a position in another department, but it was also related to engineering, and they were looking for civil engineers and not irrigation engineers. So I sat down, I looked at, the moment I saw that advert, I said, this is my entry point. I'm going into this university called Luanda. I do not have a civil engineering degree, but I am the best person that they could ever get for this job, for this thing. So I applied the 3D transformation model or approach to get that job. So you can apply it as you go for interviews. You can apply it in many cases. You can apply it for those who are not married. You can also apply it as you look for, someone to marry. It really works. And of course, it has some elements of negotiations in there, negotiate with yourself and others. And I hope that some of the things we can talk about in the YouTube channel series, or indeed when we have other opportunities to interact. I believe that we'll have more opportunities to interact beyond this. Okay. For those of us who are parents, what if you came across your child and they're saying, or maybe even your sister or your brother, and they came over and they're like, oh, I'm hungry. How would you respond to that? Anyone? Hello? You make sure they eat, right? Anyone else? It would depend. My professor used to be angry at me when I was studying. He was Dutch, so Dutch people, they want to know. So each time he would ask a question, I would start responding by, well, Prof, it depends. And he would be like, Joshua, no, it does not depend. Give me the answer. So I will not be like my prof, but yes, it depends on.
When did they last eat?
Mm-hmm.
So if they just ate, it's not told them that just ate any more food.
Yeah.
If maybe they had food like maybe 5 hours ago, that said you can make sure they eat.
Yeah. Let's assume that you don't know. Wait for lunch. Okay. Fine. That's good. That's good. So here is that little boy there. He is with his dad. Hey, Dad, I'm hungry. And the dad responds, hey, hungry, I am Dad.
We know Vicky can do that.
Honestly.
What's the difference between the dad's response and our responses that we are coming up with?
Assumptions.
So the difference here is that the dad is hearing this little boy defining himself and not the status in which he is. Because he says, I am hungry. And the dad says, you are hungry? I am Dad. He's not describing his status. So that's the importance of the word, or shall we call it phrase, I am. So in our 3D model, that is the starting point. The 3 Ds, they stand for, first D is discover, second D is differentiate, and the last D is dive in. And it's 3D, you look at something and understand it better when you look at the 3 dimensions of it, rather than 1 dimension or 2 dimensions. I hope we understand that, but those basics we cannot go into now. So that's the importance. The term I am is very important. We should not misuse it to describe status. We should always use it to describe the self. And that's what makes the difference between someone who is rich and someone who is poor and someone who is middle income and someone who is lazy and someone who works hard and someone who has good habits and someone who has bad habits, as James Clear shows us in his book. Okay, so if now let's come back to this boy. He says, hey mom, I feel hungry. Is there a difference between this expression and the previous one? I am hungry and I feel hungry. There's a huge difference between these two. But we often mistake one for the other. And that's very, very important. Hey Sonny, you feel hungry? Now the questions start pouring in. When did you last eat? You know, all that, and how can I help you and all that. So there is a big difference between now the other question that we come across often is, how is life? So how is life can be synonymous with how are you? Isn't it? Yeah. So there will be different questions. If I asked you today, what's your name? Eunice?
Yeah.
Yeah. How are you? How is life, Eunice?
Life is great.
Life is great. How are you, sir? You've had better days. Yeah. How are you, Martha? Was that Martha? Someone? Huh? You are Martha. Yes, Martha. Life is awesome. Yes. How are you? Life is fine. You can't complain. How are you? You're well. Yeah, that's it. Make it simple. Yeah, brief. How are you? How is life? Life is good. Yeah, so you can get different responses to that. Oh, it's interesting. Well, I'm just trying to make it. You know, the other day, I'm just surviving, you know. It's a roller coaster. It's work in progress, just going with the flow, navigating the ups and downs. But overall, you know, doing well. What does this tell you about the person? Does it say anything about the person? When you meet someone and you ask them, how are you? And they respond. So we trivialize the greeting and the responses especially we give. So we must be careful about the responses we give to the questions we get. By the way, in life, what matters the most is not what someone does to you. Someone's action towards you doesn't matter as much. What matters the most is your reaction to the action. So what someone does when they meet you and they ask you, how are you, how is life, how are you, and stuff like that, matters less. But how you respond to that means a lot. It works on your psychology, even though you may not realize subconsciously. And it still has a very huge bearing on the I am. That always you must keep at the back of your mind. So life is good, thanks, and you? That's a better response. Life is going great, thanks, you? All is well, thank you. How about you? I'm great, thank you. How are you? So the difference here is in understanding who you are. I can run ahead of myself and say the way he responds will differ from the way she responds based on their understanding of who they are. So psychologists will tell you that it really, really matters. And next time you go for an interview, I'm also starting something on interviewing and coaching people. I started doing it a long time ago. I think it works pretty much well for a lot of people. When you go into for an interview, you know interviews can start as early as the day you write that letter, that application letter. The interview has started. So people don't realize. They think, oh, I'm just applying. No, the interview has started right there. The way you write your letter. So in there, if the recruiters are smart, and nowadays we have professional recruiters, the way they read your letter, and now they're using AI. So the way they have structured AI is such that when AI reads your letter, it already has an idea of the person they're dealing with. You know that nowadays what is most valuable for you when it comes to interviews or work is not the qualifications, not really. It is you, your attitude. That's what is more important. So what they do, recruiters, smart recruiters, what they do is, that's why they can employ someone with a certificate and leave you with a degree. And where we are going now, as you know, they say that by 2050, most of the jobs that will be there are not here yet. Because there will be skills, a lot of skills that we'll have to develop. And so for employers, for organizations, what they are looking for is the attitude that they can train and work with and make sure that they are more productive and not necessarily the paper that you have. That's why you have seen, if you haven't seen, you should be aware that micro-credentials are becoming more and more important. By micro-credentials, I mean the targeted training that you can do online, even if it doesn't mean getting any professional paper, but a recognition of a credit that makes much more sense. It is more powerful. I used to say that to my student when I was at Luana, and I also used to refer to even my own experience that the job I got was not because of all the courses that I did. It was because of the few courses that I did, and that made me present myself as something that they needed. And that's how we got there. So micro-credentials are becoming the thing. Back to the theme of our discussion this afternoon. The difference is in the I am. That being the case, if you Google this up, AI will tell you I am, leads to people saying, me when I'm hungry, you don't play around with me. So it becomes the I am instead of the feeling. That's very important. So take care. Next time you use the word I am, be careful and be cautious about it. So this brings us to the founding or the basis or the background for the 3D transformation model. It's a fallacy that is there. The fallacy, the minister and we were engaging, we used the napkins, those ones, they became our writing pads. So he would draw a graph and draw it like that, and then I would take it back and say, no, you're drawing it the wrong way, it's supposed to go the other way. So after a very long debate, we came to a consensus that I think the onus really is on individuals. Yes, the bank has a role to play. Yes, government has a role to play. Yes, the president has a role to play. But it boils down to the individual human beings that are in that country, in that society, in that family, and in that office of a child, a son, or in that office of a daughter. That's what it boils down to. You know the financial crisis that could keep on happening. Someone said, where a foolish man sees crisis, a wise man sees opportunities. Is that true? Yes. That's why the environment you are in, the default environment you are in, should not be allowed to be the thing that determines really how far you go and how. People blame it on policies. They say wrong policies, governments made wrong policies, banks made wrong policies. But what are policies? Policies are principles that govern you. And whose policies? Who makes those policies? If Standard Bank decided to make a bad policy, should that define doom for me? I'm a client there. Should that define doom for me? No, it shouldn't. Even if the president makes a bad policy, it should not be the end of my life. I should not be crying, oh, Trump, save the world. Hey, please come, open up. US side, don't close it. No. It boils down to personal policies, a set of principles that govern the identity. I think one of the greatest things in the book, the Atomic Habits, that we did not discuss here, is the starting point of everything, and that is identity. So in the 3D model, we focus on, first of all, defining your identity. Who am I? I'm hungry. Okay. I'm sad. Okay. I'm a dumped nobody. Okay. But you're not. That's just a feeling. We understand, of course, that the world is very unfair. We live in a world that is very unfair. The world, not the earth, not the planet. The word is cosmos, right? The order of things. It's unfair. That's true. And there's very, very tough competition. Creatures are competitive beings. You compete. That's why there's ecosystem, survival of the best, of the fittest. We have all those, principles that govern life. But what we also must always remember is that when God created us, for those of us who believe that it's God who created us, I believe most of us do believe so, He really put in us everything. That's why you see that even someone who loses their limb, they have one leg or one hand, they can still make it big in life. Because a human being is a wonderful machine. So you have so many capabilities. How much of our brain do we use? Too little. How much of our hands do we use? Too little. Most of the time, they are folded like this, and they are packed somewhere. Packed in different places, sometimes there, sometimes here, sometimes packed here. We pack our hands, but there's much more that we can do with our hands, with our heads, with our legs, and with our mind especially. It's unimaginable. That's why Elon Musk, for him, it's a reality to go to Mars and inhabit it. It's possible. You see, it boils down to the identification of your own self. Who am I? Elon Musk knows very clearly who he is, and you cannot preach it out of him. Oh, it will be very hard. And that's why he would go to the state White House. You call it White House, right? He would go there in his hat and with a baby, you know. Nobody does that. He knows who he is and what he's doing. He believes that he is greater than Trump or any president of the. He is bigger than the White House. That's what he believes in. That's why now he is leading Dodge. He thinks this American thing is a project that I can fix. Why? He believes in himself. So he defined himself. He took time to define himself. So that's the starting point of the 3D model that we are talking about here. It's a 3D model for, first of all, defining your identity. I am. And then you differentiate. And then you're going to dive in. So let's dive in. Discovery. Who am I? If I were to pause there and ask this question to all of us, who are you? Okay, I'll count for 10 seconds and then I'm going to pause there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Good. We are good now? Who is able to articulate who they are? I can challenge you that it is very few. If at all there's anyone. The answer you're going to give me most likely will be, well, you know, that's most likely what you're going to do. You know, I mean, well, I am, well, you know, I'm a business person. I'm also, you know, I like associating with people, and, you know, that's not who you are. Right there, you lose or you win. If you cannot define yourself, who you are. That's why James Clear says it very clearly. It has to start with the identity. The identity must be clear. You're not going to the gym because you want to go to the gym. No. Because I am a healthy and productive person. Now, a healthy and productive person must have a healthy body. A healthy body comes from taking good care of yourself. You have to have proper nutrition. You have to exercise. You have to... Why? Because I am. Now, you are, of course, you engage yourself in a process of becoming that I am. But you cannot become what is not known. So at the onset, you must decide and define the I. Sit down and ask yourself this question. Say, that short boy who was talking to us earlier today, he asked the question, who am I? Who am I? And you will have a very good discussion with yourself. Because that should be the starting point. And James Clear actually made the job very easy for me. So we come back to the issue of birth and default environment. Yes, environment can, you know, mold you into all that, whatever you... But those are attributes. Those are things that come along the way. You should never allow them to define your identity. The fact that I was born in a developing country, or what they might also call a poor country, should not mean that, therefore, every Malawian is poor. Malawians have low IQ. That's not me. Maybe other Malawians. I usually tell my children when they are, you know, talking about, you know, at school, everybody's doing this and everybody's doing that, and for us, you know, this, that. And I ask them a simple question. Are you everybody? Is anybody here everybody? You are not everybody. So you should not be worrying about everybody. If everybody owns an iPhone, I am not everybody. It's okay for me not to own an iPhone because I'm different. So we talk about this on the surface, but I think it really requires us to go deep and into deep cogitation. This is where meditation becomes useful. That's why it is even advisable. That 1 hour of deep thinking, we know what it does, is that it allows you to reflect. Brian Tracy will tell you that every day. I think, who was that? Was that Martha? Martha again? Yes. Oh, no, not Martha. I think it was the name again. Agnes. It was Agnes who said that, she has her plan to do list and then she reviews all that. Brian Tracy goes further and he says, for you to do that very well, you must also go and revise who you are. And that can be represented. There are proxies for you, who you are, and that can be goals for that year. Like this year, this is who I am. So there's who I am and then there's what I am, but we can talk about that another time. So this is very important. The time you afford yourself to deeply reflect, that's where you meet the real you. People play down on this meditation. That's why even when you go to church, it's not a good idea you just go in, jump in, you start with songs and drums. No way. You will not have very good spiritual members of the church. They need to sit down, reflect, meditate. That's why meditation is a very powerful tool. And the Japanese, the Asians who have mastered it, you see the great things that come out of it, right? Why? It's because it allows them to focus and bring everything. The PK gave us a good example of the magnifying glass. To bring everything towards, you direct everything to where? Everybody? No. You direct everything to the I am. So I used this principle when I was thinking about that interview and preparing for the... If you use this approach, you will be very competitive in any interview. That's why you must choose your interview. Don't go to an interview when you're not sure that you want the job. Of course, there are opportunities you can take for practicing. That's understandable, but be careful. What if they pick you? You get stuck there. Then you end up going to work and you don't like it. That's not fair to you. That's also not fair to the organization. So don't pick up a job for the sake of picking it up. Everybody does that because this is the opportunity. That's where the opportunity is. That's not good. That's not fair. And that's why they're not productive. And you spend 60 years. Well, you start working at the age of 22. So by the time you retire at 60, I will tell you this, many people who have retired on earth, not only in Malawi, are living in regret. The reason is because whatever they did all those years was not about they themselves. They only realized later on, actually I am this, not all that. And I wasted all that time. Anyone who is between 30 and 40 here? Not a very good thing to ask, but it's okay. Yeah, we are in a book club, so we can do that. Between 30 and 40, right? Yeah. If you haven't reached 40 yet, as you approach 40, I can guarantee you, you will meet that question. Who is going to ask it? I don't know. But someone is going to ask you that question. Who are you? And then you want to discover, you mean I wasted all these years? I met this guy, this guy here. I was working for Arizona State University at some point, right here in Malawi. They were running a program. So he's a behavioral scientist. So when we met, and that time I think I had just clocked 40, because people think I'm very young, usually. I had just clocked 40, and he looked at what I was doing and how I was performing at work. And so he's a behavioral scientist, and he sat me down, and he asked me, who are you? And I gave him a very straight answer, which I will not tell you. And when I did that, he looked at me. He said, "That's exactly what I see in you. And what steps now are you going to take to make sure that you becomes you? That I am becomes I am." Because there's a process between the original discovery of I am and the fulfillment of the I am. People get lost here. Wow, they get lost if they know the I am. If they don't know in the first place, you cannot say they get lost. So yagwambalendija ndindiu. So they go all over the place. So that is a very significant thing, important thing in life. I also met Cosmas Maduka here. He's one of the billionaires, coming up billionaires in Nigeria. And he asked us the same question. We were in a group. And he asked us the same question. Who are you? When people looked at each other and looked at themselves, as if someone was asking a Greek question or a mathematical puzzle. How can you be 40 and you don't know? But when you come to 40, I don't know what happens really. Well, I know a little bit. The psychologists, they explain why. But that question pops up. Now, one of the reasons why people die fast when they retire is because they live in remorse and regret. What do they regret the most? I wasted my time because I did not do something that is related to who I am. So what am I going to do now? It's a lost battle. Okay, die. You have failed yourself, you have failed society. What do? Regress and die. That's why they quickly go into depression. When you discover you are I am, it doesn't matter whether you retire from whatever job or whatever, you will go on. Because the I am doesn't end the day they give you that later or cut you off if it's government.